Outcome of Constitution Amendment 9th National Assembly. This video explains the 5th Constitution alteration process of bills passed by the National Assembly and State Houses of Assembly but not signed into law by the President. Now, let us look at some of the bills. This amendment sought to make it a punishable offense for anyone to refuse or neglect to comply with legislative summons without satisfactory reasons. This amendment sought to include members of courts or tribunals created by an act of the National Assembly or State House of Assembly as judicial officers. This amendment sought to empower the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission to ensure that government agencies comply with making required payments into the Federation account to sanction defaulters and to also ensure that the revenue from the account is disbursed accordingly to the federal, state and local governments. This amendment was aimed at enhancing the independence of the National Assembly and State Assembly Service Commissions by saying that they shall not be under the direction or control of anybody or authority. This amendment sought to give states powers to legislate on airports, fingerprint, identification, and criminal records by moving them from the exclusive legislative list to the concurrent legislative list. For now, only the federal government can make laws on these items. This amendment sought to remove a provision in the Constitution that allows the executive to modify laws. This was inserted in the original enactment of the Constitution in 1999 during the shift from military to civilian rule in order to facilitate a smooth transition. With a civilian government in power and the National Assembly having lawmaking powers, it is no longer necessary. This amendment sought to ensure that the President presents international treaties signed by Nigeria and any other country to the National Assembly for adoption not later than 180 days after it was agreed upon. This amendment sought to require the President or Governor of a state to present their annual budgets before the National Assembly or State Houses of Assembly at most 90 days before 31st December of every year. This amendment sought to establish a State Security Council for each state modeled after the National Security Council to advise the governor of a state on matters relating to public security in the states. This amendment sought to empower the National Assembly and State Houses of Assembly to summon the President or the governors of a state to answer questions on issues the National and State Houses of Assembly have powers to make laws. This amendment provided that where the Appropriation Act, that is, the annual budget, has not been passed for a financial year, the President or Governor of a state can only authorize withdrawal of monies or make expenditure for a period of 3 months in the absence of the budget, after which it must be passed. This is to replace the current 6-month allowable period and discourage late budget passage. This amendment is a name change seeking to replace the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation with the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the federal government to appropriately capture the purpose and the federal government ownership of the fund. This established the office of the Accountant General of the federal government to supervise and administer the federal government account, separate from the office of the Accountant General of the Federation, who shall focus on the 3 tiers of government. This amendment sought to provide for a State of the Nation and State of the State address to be delivered by the President and Governor of a state. This was intended to include former presidents of the Senate and former speakers of the House of Representatives, in addition to the current office holders, as members of the Council of State, to ensure that the 3 arms of government are equally represented in the Council. This outlined additional requirements for associations seeking to become political parties, which includes that they must have national spread in their location and membership. It also mandated such associations to ensure federal character in their executive committees. This amendment directed the government to provide free, compulsory, and universal basic education for children between primary and junior secondary school age, free senior secondary education, including technical and vocational education where practicable, and access to qualitative higher education. This amendment sought to provide for the establishment and core functions of the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps (NSCDC) in the Constitution. And that is it for the bills passed by the 9th National Assembly and State Houses of Assembly but not signed into law by the President.